Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying healthy and having a good day. I have some more feel-good stories to share with you today. They're all positive and happy, and I hope it brightens your day. So let's just jump right into it. If you are a parent right now, you are probably trying to find some ways to occupy your kids who are not going to school. There's a lot of changes, and, being at home for a long period of time is hard enough as an adult, but taking care of kids and trying to keep them entertained while staying indoors or in the neighborhood can be really difficult. Daphne Sashin, she found that it was very difficult to keep her kids occupied, so she had been trying to find some new ways to keep them busy. She says playgrounds are out of the picture, play dates are out of the picture, all those things. So she wanted to be able to occupy her kids. She knows that she can't come in contact with anyone outside her home, but she says that, we can go for walks, we can go on bike rides. So that's how she kind of came up with this idea. And she asked her neighbors to use chalk to draw pictures on their sidewalks or driveways. She basically emailed her, neighborhood group and kind of set out, a day, and they were all going to go outside and paint pictures on their driveways. It was, of course, it's keeping social distancing because everyone's drawing a picture on their own driveway, but it kind of just brings the community together, and she thought this idea was kind of cool. She says, the idea was this would be something that would brighten everyone's day, and it would bring us together as a community, even though we can't physically be together. And it actually turned out really, really well. There was more than 50 homes in her neighborhood. This is in Northern California. They all came together and drew some pictures. I guess even some homes that didn't have drawings, they kind of were all outside hanging out. It was just kind of like a little community social distance hangout. And then, later on the kids got to walk around, and they called it kind of the California Sidewalk Art Museum. And it was just extra motivation to walk around the neighborhood and get some exercise and see some cool drawings with the community coming together. So I thought that was a pretty cool story. Now, my next one has nothing to do with COVID-19. It has nothing to do with going on right now. It's just a pretty cool thing. Virginia has become the first state in the South to mandate 100% clean power. Pretty cool. So it's a new piece of legislation introduced and passed in Virginia State House. It basically optimizes solar and offshore wind resources as a way of replacing fossil fuels like coal. Basically, of course, to offer cleaner and cheaper energy to the population. So the Virginia Clean Economy Act, VCEA, is actually one of the largest sustainable energy bill ever introduced in the Commonwealth. This bill moves to transitions Virginia's energy economy to 100% renewables by 2050. Pretty cool. The two affected power companies, Dominion Energy and American Electric Power, have until 2045 to retire electric generation powered by fuels that emit carbon dioxide as a byproduct. So companies that fail to meet these 100% renewable timelines will have to pay a deficiency tax or purchase carbon offset certificates. To try and safeguard workers from being laid off due to these deficiency costs, or to provide opportunities for workers, the VCEA would take some of the deficiency payments and deposit them into a fund that would finance new training programs for renewable energy workforce for the modern grid. They're kind of just covering all the basics, aren't they? Beginning in 2026 and every 3 years thereafter, the Commission is required to adjust the required energy efficiency goals for the successive 3 years. That's what the legislation says. So efficiency is part of the VCEA plan to reduce power costs for middle and low income houses in the state. And legislators hope that this will amount to about $3,500 in savings over about 30 years. Pretty cool. That's a lot of money. The monthly rate caps of 6% for power will be placed on low-income earners and families as part of the percentage of income payment program that will help ensure the grid transition does not burn the pockets of, the people that are vulnerable financially in Virginia. The reason that rooftop solar can contribute to these goals is by allowing homeowners to generate some of the power that they need while sending the rest into the grid. So each time a new house is powered by solar panels, more renewable energy is available to everyone else in the grid. This is representing something similar to the Social Security welfare system, but basically it's for electricity. This has been the added benefit of increasing grid durability, since there will be many-fold more generators of power plants to draw from decreasing the chance that things like natural disasters, the 2011 Virginia earthquake, for example, will topple the grid and knock out power for everyone. So they're really covering basically everything they can. They're making sure people are still going to have jobs. They're covering any natural disasters like the 2011 Virginia earthquake. They're kind of knocking out everything that you would think. So this is pretty cool. And according to the Lake Research Partners, 73% of Virginians want state lawmakers to move towards advanced energy investments outlined within the VCEA. So this makes good economic sense for the average family in the union's wealthiest states. There you go. So Virginia has become the first state in the South to mandate 100% clean power. I love stories like this. It just means, we're moving forward to a cleaner environment. Now, my next story is about a Chinese company that shipped some masks to Italy. But they kind of added a little special touch in this shipment. So there were some shipment crates, and they were containing tens of thousands of respirator masks to Italy in their time of need right now. But they kind of did it with a little bit of an artistic flair, and they kind of did a little true Italian romantic thing, is what they're kind of calling it. So, the consumer technology giant Exomi, I believe it's how you say it, mailed the shipment to the Italian Civil Protection Department. And on the side of the crates, they did an ancient line of poetry from the Roman philosopher Seneca. It says, "We are waves from the same sea, leaves from the same tree, and flowers from the same garden." Pretty cool. It says, "Since we arrived 2 years ago, we have felt loved and deeply integrated into the life of the country. This is also why we felt the duty to support Italy in the management of COVID-19 epidemic by donating a first important quantity of FFP3 masks." So this is the company's chief financial officer. He called it a source of great pride to be able to offer the help and praise the Italian government. Excellent job for the benefit of the whole community. As we know, there's lots of medical shortages of masks and test kits, respirators, all those things that we need right now. And so they were able to ship some off to Italy in their time of need to help try to control the outbreak. Here's a story for all you animal lovers out there. I'm sure if you are a parent, if you have lots of little kids at home, you probably are going, through a full day of listening to your children, beg to visit a local drive-through, to, go outside, to play, to do different things. And so some of you might have decided to go to the animal shelter and adopt some animals, because I guess a lot of people are adopting animals right now, which is pretty cool. That's a positive that's coming out of all of this. But it is difficult right now. You can't go to an animal shelter. We can't gather. So actually a lot of these humane organizations have turned to social media to ask for help in finding foster homes for all their furry animals, because a lot of shelters have received, amazing support from their communities at this time. So they're kind of putting it out to social media. They said they put a plea for emergency fosters and received over 500 applications in a matter of days, which is just incredible. This is from multiple different humane societies. It says the really good news, however, is that many shelters in cities around the U.S. are experiencing the same amazing response from all of their communities. So there is multiple animal shelters that are going to social media asking for, emergency fosters, because these animals, need to be placed somewhere so workers can go home too, and they've just been having lots of responses. I think that would definitely keep your isolation busy. Maybe we should all go out there, go to social media, and adopt a furry friend during this isolation to keep us company. All right, that's all the stories I have for right now. But don't go anywhere. I have some more great stories to share with you, so stay tuned.
In 2008, the U.S. national debt was $10 trillion. Today, it's over $23 trillion, and it's rising like a hockey stick. If you don't think that we're sitting on a house of cards, you're living with your head in the sand. But since you're listening to my podcast, you're clearly smarter than the average American. So, what's your plan? Can you afford another hit to your retirement, like the last downturn when the S&P dropped 50%? Look back historically. When the bottom falls out of everything else, gold tends to safeguard savings. And right now, thanks to a little-known IRS tax law, you can even move your IRA or eligible 401k to an IRA backed by physical gold and silver. It's perfect for those who want to protect their hard-earned retirement savings from any future geopolitical uncertainty. Birch Gold Group has thousands of satisfied customers, countless 5-star reviews, and an A+ rating with BBB. Contact Birch Gold to request free info kits on physical precious metals. See if diversifying into gold and silver makes sense for you.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC, America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alyssa Jo. We're back. I have some more stories to share with you. I thought this one was pretty cute. I'm a hopeless romantic, and this one just touched my heart, so I hope you enjoy it. So, with all this chaos going on, we're all kind of in quarantine or isolating, and you would never think that a new love would happen in this way. But Jeremy Cohen says that love will always find a way. So he was quarantined in, he lives in New York, and he is now dating his neighbor because he used a drone to give his phone number to her, that he spotted her dancing on a nearby rooftop, and then he took the drone and gave his phone number to her. So, Jeremy, he's a Brooklyn-based music photographer, and he's a filmmaker. He's worked with some big stars, Miley Cyrus, Lizzo. He's just one of, one of the millions of Americans that are, trying to figure out what to do during this isolation. And then he saw this person dancing on a rooftop. And he says, I thought she was really cute from far away. During this quarantine, I think everyone is fiending for social interaction. I was like, oh my god, a girl. I haven't seen one for so long. So he decided to pull out his phone and kind of document what happened. So now these videos have gone viral on social media. If you've heard of TikTok before, I believe they're on TikTok now, because it's a super cute little encounter. It says a story about a quarantine cutie, and you literally kind of see, you have to check the video. I'll put it on our social media. It's super cute. But he wrote his phone number on a piece of paper, he taped it to the drone, and then he used the remote control to navigate the drone in the air towards the building. So the dancer that I've been talking about, her name is Tori Siganarella, and she actually says, I was hanging out with my roommate, and I was actually doing the dance from High School Musical. This is the we're all in this together, and she says, I was not expecting to get a phone number out of it. We could see his balcony pretty clearly from where we were on the roof, and he basically just kind of shouted over to me. So in the video that went viral online, it's a TikTok video, and Jeremy admits to flirting is normally daunting for him, that he says, but he is a hopeless romantic, and he clearly wanted to do this. So he did. He sent over his phone number to this girl. There's a bunch of different videos. Like I said, I will post them up online, but I thought it was going really, really cute. They FaceTimed, had FaceTime dates, social media, just all that kind of thing. So I just thought I would share that, because even in quarantine, even in isolation, apparently you can still find love. And so there's always hope. There's always hope. Now, my next story is a positive one about the pandemic. Researchers have found a way to sterilize and reuse face masks during this whole craziness. As we know, there's lots of shortages of face masks and respirators and things that we need to help those that become ill, or to avoid becoming ill, and so face masks have been, a really big thing right now. But some researchers from Duke Health Research and clinical teams in North Carolina have now confirmed a way to use existing methods to kind of clean and reuse the masks. So this is it's like a specialized equipment to aerosol hydrogen peroxide, and it basically kills layers of the mask to kill germs, so including the virus and anything like that, and this is without degrading the mask material. So it says, we had never considered needing it for something like face masks, but now we've proven that it will work, and we'll begin using the technology immediately in all 3 Duke Health hospitals. So they're trying to reuse as much as they can. So this process should keep a significant number of masks in use at the Duke University Hospital, as well as Duke Regional and Duke Relief hospitals. So it just kind of eases a little bit of the shortage, and then other places that, don't have this technology, will have the masks available to them. So it's the use of hydrogen peroxide to decontaminate N95 masks, and this is all tested and published back in actually 2016, but the results, didn't widespread. There was earlier studies that did include, fit testing after cleaning, basically, sizing a mask for individual wearers to prove, that it'll work. And so now that's what they've done. So Cameron Wolfe, the Associate Professor of Medicine and Infectious Disease Specialist, says the ability to reuse the crucial N95 mask will boost the hospital's ability to protect frontline health care workers during this time of critical shortages of N95 masks. So a restaurant in California that found a pretty compassionate way to keep their business open, as well as caring for hospital staffers at the same time during this whole pandemic, is just flooding with so much business right now. This restaurant decided to adopt a doc or nurse catering service. And it's just got them so much business. People are absolutely loving what they're doing. So I thought I'd share it with you. It's a pretty interesting thing. So what they did, they continued their takeout and delivering services. This is the Tootsie's restaurant in California, in Palo Alto. They've been using catering service to actually feed doctors and nurses at their local hospitals. Pretty cool. So the owner, Rocco Scordello, launched his Adopt a Doctor or Nurse program just earlier this month, and community members have commissioned his restaurant to prepare and serve more than 2,000 meals to various hospital departments in the Bay Area. Says even the first day was 750 requests. I was like, oh my, I'm going to be busier than when I'm actually open. So it's good. It's really good to see the community coming in. I thought that's a pretty cool idea. So they cater, send out, and feed, doctors and nurses and just hospitals during this time. All those frontline workers that are doing everything they can to help us. So this catering program is helping feed the hospital personnel during all the outbreaks, and it's also helping the business. He actually had to rehire a number of staffers, so people that were laid off. There's some people that got a job to keep them busy during this whole pandemic and get them having some money. And he's just, wanted to share this story because he's hoping that businesses around the world will implement the Adopt a Nurse or Doc program in their own restaurants just to support hospital workers during this pandemic. But yes, now they're getting lots and lots of business. Now people have more jobs and feeding all the frontline workers because we should be doing everything we can to help them out during this time. Speaking of helping healthcare workers during this time, I have another story that people are really helping the front line as much as they can. Some hotels are actually opening up free rooms to all healthcare workers that are battling the COVID-19 outbreaks. So hospital staffers in New York City and the UK that are, currently really battling the outbreaks. There are some hotels in these areas that are offering free accommodation during all these coming weeks. So Ty Warner, the chairman of the company that owns Four Seasons in Midtown New York City, just announced that he'd be opening up the 5-star hotel to state for complimentary use. So he got inspired to volunteer the free rooms after hearing one of Government Andrew Cuomo's calls to action this week. He said many of those working in New York City have to travel long distance to and from their homes after putting in 18-hour days. They need a place to work where they can rest and regenerate. I heard Governor Cuomo's calls to action during one of his press conferences, and there was no other option for us but to do whatever we could to help. So now there's a number of prominent hospitals within a 30-block radius of this hotel, big hospitals, and now they're able to use this hotel as a place to rest after their long days, completely complimentary. I just love seeing people go above and beyond and help the front care workers at this time, because I can't imagine working that hard all day long and then having to commute so far through New York City and doing it all over again constantly. So he says, our 176 beds will be occupied by National Health Service workers and medical professionals. It's at this time that I think the whole of our industry needs to show solidarity, not just for our staff in these uncertain times, but obviously for those who need the accommodation most in the coming months. It says it's something we're delighted to have come into agreement with. It will operate free of charge, and our staff will operate the hotels as normal. The healthcare workers will be able to stay there without any cost whatsoever in these next few months when they need isolation away from family members who may be affected by what's going on. There you go. I love hearing people help the frontline workers during all this craziness. All right, it's time for a little bit of a break, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, I got more feel-good stories to share with you, so stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So right now we might all feel a little bit disconnected because of what's going on in our world. We can't really connect with anyone. But I kind of ran into a story, and it's about the science of kindness. Biology proves how we are all connected, and I thought I'd share it with you because I feel it just gives us a little bit of hope, a little bit of positivity, and I think we all need to feel a little positivity about being connected. So this is kind of the biology behind, I guess, what proves that we're all connected, the science of kindness. So this is what they say. They said, it's become very clear that, being kind to someone uplifts both people and creates a positive link between them. Many people feel really good after they help somebody else, volunteering or even just holding a door open. You kind of feel that sense of happy. You just feel good. So this is kind of why they're explaining why it feels good. It's clear that helping someone else or, just being kind, witnessing any kind of kindness kind of sets off a series of changes in the brain, similar to the release of endorphins, So spiritually, of course, helping someone is the right thing to do. But the biological connection is between the spiritual understanding and, that suggests that nature kind of has wired you to be kind. Your body is reinforcing and rewarding these, in quotation, right things with pleasurable sensations. So the receiver feels good, but he or she is also being acknowledged or valued. So acts of kindness, therefore, create meaningful connections between people. It is part of what, they call kindness connection cycle, where, acts of kindness connect the giver and receiver to one another, which is so true. You hold open a door for a stranger, very small thing, but you feel connected. It's a kind thing that you did. So, although, it's kind of different for everybody, it's different, for what you're doing, who you're with, the act of kindness, of course. There's lots of different, examples of being connected to each other, through other things, just interpersonal interactions, workplace, community, family, all of those things. But, however, common biology that we all share, for example, is blood courses through our arteries and veins before being filtered by the kidneys and pumped by a heart, which beats approximately 100,000 times every day. There are many other systems that, kind of with slight variation, that kind of function the same way in healthy people. So such as regulation of blood sugar, blood pressure, immune responses, and although we kind of all differ in outward appearance, what we look like, what color of hair we have, how tall we are, our bodies kind of still generally work the same way. So beyond all these systems that we have in common, they say we also actively share our biological lives with each other. So they say, let's focus on oxygen. One of the most abundant elements on the planet is that this is absolutely critical for our survival, which is oxygen, of course, right? We require to use calories and we convert them into energy for our cells. And, this kind of processes then produces carbon dioxide, which we exhale as a byproduct. But none of this is possible without oxygen. So now they're saying, let's imagine that you and I are hiking a trail in the woods and we stop to admire a vista. Much of the oxygen we are inhaling is probably produced by the trees and plant life. Yet how did the trees make oxygen? As other hikers have gone through the forest, the trees powered by sunlight absorb the carbon dioxide that is exhaled by hikers so they can transform it into cellulose. O2 is then released from the CO2 that the trees have absorbed, thus continuing the oxygen cycle between hikers and the trees. So this means that the oxygen that we breathe in to survive was used by somebody else in the past to help them live as well. And it will also be used by someone else in the future. I've never thought of it that way, to be honest. They say the oxygen is constantly being recycled. Each person needs about 500 liters of oxygen each day. So there's been lots of different authors that have kind of speculated on how we may inhale the same oxygen and all these different things. But bottom line is what they want to conclude is that all of our lives depend on sharing, and this sharing extends across time. So we're all sharing oxygen constantly, which, you know, when the oxygen that's helping you live has helped someone else live and will help someone else in the future live. So they're saying what goes around comes around. Life is much more about cycles rather than straight lines. So oxygen is just one of the many examples. By the nature of our shared biology, we are connected to one another. So this is the same with nitrogen, water, iron, and a host of other biological essential factors that are recycled by other life forms. So then this gets more complex when we include the interactions of insects and animals, you know, that are necessary to keep the fabric of our interwoven network healthy and vibrant. So basically, what does all of this teach us? It tells us that our lives are more intimately connected than we might have ever thought. On a basic level, it teaches that sharing, kindness, and cooperation is actively required for living beings to survive. So beyond that, we're deeply connected in the oxygen cycle. Of course, you know, without trees and greenery, we would not survive. And as those systems depend on the carbon dioxide to survive, we sustain them in turn. So, short-sighted selfishness that overuses or overabuses a component of the cycle will come back around to affect us. This cycle is very fragile, so without us doing the right thing to responsibly maintain our part of the mutually nourishing cycle, then it can fail. Doing the right thing honors two principles: being kind to and respecting the roles of others, members of the cycle, and being kind to ourselves to sustain our own well-being. How cool is that? I love that. The science behind kindness, biology proves that we're all connected. Now, my next story is about some people that get affected from COVID-19 that don't have the same resources as us, the people that are homeless. But a lot of homeless people from California to France now are being given emergency shelters during all this COVID-19 outbreaks, which I thought was pretty cool. We have to always, you know, help out the others that don't have the same resources as us. So some homeowners, you know, we're all, you know, trying to self-isolate, and that's easy when we have our home to sit inside and you know, to isolate by ourselves. But a lot of homeless people across North America and Europe were suffering, and so now they're being offered shelters in unused hotel rooms just to help the self-isolation, basically. So in London, as an example, there was a hotel that booked 300 hotel rooms at a discounted rate to house the city's rough sleepers for the next 12 weeks, they call it. The mayor's legislative team plans to continue working with the intercontinental hotel rooms to facilitate additional discount booking should the crisis develop further during the coming months. But as of right now, for 12 weeks, there's 300 rooms that they're allowing homeless people to stay in. They say the coronavirus outbreak affects everyone in London, and we must do all we can to safeguard everyone's health, not least those Londoners who face spending each night sleeping rough on the capital streets. Rough sleepers already face difficult and uncertain lives, and I'm determined to do all I can to ensure they, along with other Londoners, are given the best protection possible. So this is just, you know, one of the initiatives that the UK government is implementing, but they are actually doing that in America as well. They're in California. The legislative team has reportedly secured roughly 4,000 hotel rooms statewide to help house homeless people that do not have the resources. They say this is the opportunity to bring folks indoors and then try to get them into permanent housing when this is said and done. The state has also allocated more than $150 million to local governments working to house the homeless during the outbreaks, with another $50 million being distributed for renting travelers' trailers and hotel rooms as just emergency shelter. So there's all over the world, businesses are opening up their doors to help the people that do not have the resources, from the frontline care workers to the people that are living on the streets and don't have that protection. So it's always cool to see everyone come together in a time of need. But that is all the stories that I have to share with you today. I hope it brought a smile to your day in isolation, your day at home. I know it brings me a smile to be able to talk about all these positive stories. So thank you so much for listening to GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button to like and follow us on social media and leave a 5-star review. It's greatly appreciated, and I am so excited already to share more stories with you next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast.